Hi, I'm Maven. I'm a former WWE wrestler, and today I'm going to be answering some of the most Googled WWE questions. Okay, all right, here we go. Do WWE wrestlers get hurt? Of course we get hurt. Wrestling might be predetermined, it might be fake. Ain't nothing fake about gravity. When you fall, you fall. Now, when I think of my own personal injury history, while I was in WWE, I had several surgeries. I broke my leg about a year into my career wrestling Christian live on SmackDown, finished the match. Thank you to Christian because he carried me through it. I broke my elbow in a match with Matt Hardy. I think at last count I have separated my right shoulder in about 25 times. I've broken fingers, I've broken elbows, I literally have chunks of bone as we speak floating around my elbow, and it locks it up from time to time. I don't even want to begin to know how many concussions I've had. Do WWE wrestlers use steroids? I can only speak for myself. I'm not gonna ever put anyone else's business out on the street. Did I use steroids? I absolutely did. Do WWE wrestlers wear cups? Nah, I want absolutely nothing, and I mean nothing, between my boys and the mat. Yeah, I can't think of anything more painful than landing on a face bump and having a cup down there. Ugh. But to summarize, I did not wear a cup. I never saw anyone putting a cup on backstage, but then again, I wasn't really paying attention and watching other guys dress or get undressed back there. So maybe they did, I didn't. Do WWE wrestlers actually fight? In any business that you are in, there's going to be people you just don't like. I never really saw other wrestlers taking liberties, and by liberties I mean taking advantage of guys when they're out in the ring. Do fights happen backstage? Of course they do. If you have a problem with someone, the place to take care of it isn't out in the ring, but it might be in the locker room. I saw a couple instances backstage, and to be honest with you, they're not hard to find. Do WWE wrestlers rehearse? Yes, but only on televised shows. We rehearse strictly to make sure we get our time cues right. The referee is getting through his IFB how much time we have. And trust me, corporations pay a ton of money to the WWE to make sure that once that 1, 2, 3 pinfall happens, that immediately you, the viewing public, can see an advertisement for Chili's. Do WWE wrestlers get to keep their belts? Keep the belts forever? No. When I was the hardcore champion, I did take the belt home with me. I got to keep it 24/7. It's not like they confiscated it and said it'll be at the next show. No, the belt went home with me. I still remember friends and family taking pictures of it. I almost got in trouble the first time. I took it out to show all my buddies because, I mean, at that given moment, I was the only hardcore champion. I thought that was pretty cool. So I took it out to a bar that night. I was parked in a spot I probably shouldn't have been because I thought, I was great, and my car got towed, and I had a flight the next morning to go out and defend the hardcore championship. Not having that belt on the flight for that show was not an option. I had to wake up the lot owner. I had to pay him $500 to get my car out of the lot, and I made my flight. My wallet was a little thinner, but I learned a valuable lesson that night. Do WWE wrestlers get paid weekly? Great question. We actually do. I actually got a physical hard copy check mailed to my house every week. My routine every Tuesday was I would land from my flight from Raw the night before. All of my mail would be sitting in my kitchen peninsula. I would gather up my check, and I would gather up all my bills. I would actually I still can't believe I did this. I would actually physically drive around, and I would deposit my check in Bank of America, and then I would physically drive around and pay my bills. Do WWE wrestlers make a lot of money. It's all subjective. At the time, I was coming off of a job as a school teacher. At the end of every month, I remember having around $300 to play with. Point being, was my first contract in WWE a lot of money at the time for me? You bet your butt it was. And that was only a $50,000 contract. Obviously, once I went to pay sheets, it seemed like all the money in the world. Do WWE wrestlers get paid when injured? The quick answer to that question is absolutely. When I broke my elbow, it was the first night of a loop. I was wrestling Matt Hardy. I came off the rope for a high cross body, and Matt ducked under, which he was supposed to do, and I just landed wrong and exploded the bone in my elbow. I immediately, the next day, was flown home and sent to an orthopedic surgeon, who then told me I would have to get surgery. I didn't have to tell the WWE at the time to go ahead and take me off pay sheets and put me on my downside. They automatically did it. They knew I wasn't coming back for several months. If I would have stayed on pay sheets, no check would have came that entire time I was home. And for the last questions in, do WWE wrestlers get benefits? Great question. And the answer to that is no. Once again, we're independent contractors. An independent contractor does not have a 401k if they don't set it up themselves. An independent contractor does not have profit sharing. Our health insurance was consistent on if you got injured in the ring. If I was to get injured outside the ring, I don't know if they would have taken care of it. Okay, that's the do WWE wrestlers. On to the next one. Okay, why do WWE wrestlers wear underwear? If you need to ask that question, I got nothing for you. There's a sense of security that you need when we're jumping around, flying through the air. The last thing you want is rattling around on the undercarriage. I would always wear a thong. And why would I wear a thong? Because I wanted as little amount of material go underneath my trunks, because my trunks were not big at the time. Everybody's still going to wear something underneath that uniform, that outfit, just for security. Next question. Why do WWE wrestlers wipe their feet? Okay, great question. If you ever watched William Regal get into a wrestling ring, he climbs up the steps, he's standing still outside the ring. He's going to wipe his feet both back and forth. Why do guys do this? Respect. Respect for the wrestling ring they're getting into, respect for the business, and respect for the other competitors. The wrestling ring, it's a canvas material. Now, this canvas, it's kind of a thick material. It's going to hold on to anything that's on the bottom of your boots or shoes. We might be getting slammed, we might be falling, we might be rolling over with our face directly on the canvas. So in essence, why do WWE wrestlers wipe their feet? 1, respect, and 2, for protection. Why do WWE wrestlers shave their armpits? This is actually very funny. I shaved my armpits this morning. I do it for simple cleanliness. Most guys do it just for that smooth look, for appearance's sake. For other guys out there that don't shave their armpits, is there something wrong with it? No. Prince Albert, he was definitely one of those guys, and it feels like literally you're getting locked up to a wet carpet. Why do WWE wrestlers have long hair? Well, obviously because it works. Things go in cycles, and for the longest time, long hair was just the trend. It looked good. Also, guys might have long hair so they can call spots. By calling spots, just talking during the match on what's next. Guy might have someone in a rear naked chin lock, and he might lean down, let his hair drape over, and tell him what's coming up next. But mostly, guys had it for the aesthetics of it, for the look. Why do WWE wrestlers have wet hair? Just looks better. Every match I was ever in, you'll see guys right before their music hits, before they're getting ready to go out, and they're dumping almost an entire bottle of water. And then during the match, if somebody goes and throws a punch and they boom react to it, that quick reaction right there, you're gonna see water droplets come off. And we all wanna say, whoa, did he catch him with that punch? Sure look like it. Water droplets flying off might help with just that. Why do WWE wrestlers chew gum? Chewing gum during a match never even crossed my mind. The last thing on earth I want to do was go and hit the ropes and, take a bump and then find gum in the back of my throat. One reason I could think about, again, just like the hair, the look of it. Maybe, they take a punch, take a really big kick, and when they snap their head back, they're able to spit that gum out. To people that did it, they have more confidence in their chewing ability than I definitely do. Why do WWE wrestlers wear boots? We're putting on the impression that we're modern day gladiators out there. And gladiators have to have footwear. I still remember my very first pair of wrestling boots. It was after Tough Enough. I'm backstage and I had ordered wrestling boots. They had not come in yet. The guy that came to the rescue that gave me my first pair of boots, Triple H. He said, "Mave, come with me." And we went over to his crate. He had his own crate with all of his gimmicks, his jackets, his DX shirts. And he had a brand new pair of wrestling boots. He gifted them to me. Hunter, thank you for those boots. Why do WWE wrestlers, this one's long. Let's see what this one is. Change their names. We all have to have a gimmick, and that's the one thing I remember as a kid, dreaming about becoming a wrestler. I used to sit and think, what was my name gonna be? And actually, after Tough Enough, I actually went to Johnny Ace and told him I want to change my name. In my mind, I wanted to maybe change my name to like Bishop or something. Johnny quickly shot me down and told me, well, the whole world knows you as, let me do it in Johnny's voice. Maven, the whole world knows you as Maven from Tough Enough. That's your name. Most guys change their name just to get their gimmick over, just to have something that they can market themselves. That's why guys change their name. Why do WWE wrestlers bleed? We don't say we're gonna bleed, we say we're gonna get color. I still remember seeing Austin leaned over and that shot of him, and he's straining and the blood's dripping down his face and it's actually going into his mouth and in between his teeth. That's an iconic image. That's an iconic picture. And whenever you can add props to bolster your realism, you're going to do that. In essence, bleeding, getting color, it's another prop. Why do WWE wrestlers die so young? Wow, we went there. There's just certain things that the human body's not meant to do. The human body's not meant to fall down over and over and over again every night, much less every week. During my run, I was active with obviously with painkillers. I was active with performance enhancers. And those don't prolong your life. Those don't help your life. Wrestlers don't have off seasons. Wrestlers are on the road 365 days out of the year. You want to try to do anything you can to find some relief. All right, perfect. There we go. When do WWE wrestlers practice their matches? We all have to be at the ring on TV days at 1 o'clock. Now the show goes live at 8. Went live at 9 in my time. But what are we doing from that time from 1 till the show goes live? Well, a lot of guys are practicing their matches. That's a good time to practice. When do WWE wrestlers find out who wins? When you arrive at the arena at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you go to catering. Now, when you go to catering, you're starting to get a buzz. Some of the times, the production meeting isn't even completed yet. Guys find out who wins after the production meeting, after catering, and then they would put out what's called a run sheet. This sheet would actually show who was going to wrestle, what order in the card you were going to wrestle, who your agent or producer was of the match, the amount of time for that match. So you might have Maven versus Stevie Richards, 6 minutes. And then it might say on the side, Arn Anderson. Then we would go up and Stevie and I would get together. We would find Arn. And at that moment right there, Arn will tell us who's going over. When do WWE wrestlers retire? Guys might leave and then come back 5 years down the road when they see another run in them. When a guy retires is when A, he can no longer draw money, and B, when no company is willing to pay him anymore. When do wrestlers get paid? I got paid every Tuesday. Some guys would take what's called a draw. Now, what's a draw? A draw is hard currency, cash at the show. When I was there, our draw amount that we could take every show was $200. And I know some of the old timers, they religiously took their draw. They said, if someone's willing to hand you money, you take it right then and right there. Unfortunately, if you took your draw, that's just money that they took out of your check for the following week. When do WWE wrestlers go home? I thought I was on the road a lot. And then I saw, John Cena. John Cena, I think, was on the road for, almost 9 months. I might be off or whatever, but for several months. Unfortunately, the more popular you are, probably the less you see of your house. Are WWE wrestlers actors? Would I consider myself an actor? The answer is yes. I mean, when guys go out there and they're cutting a promo and they're talking about how they're going to see somebody at the next pay-per-view and stuff. It's all acting. I mean, are we Meryl Streep? No. Next, are WWE wrestlers athletes? You bet your sweet. Yes. In order to do what we do, you have to have some sort of athleticism. Now, like everything, you have your good athletes, you have your not so great athletes, but wrestlers as a whole are indeed athletes. Are WWE wrestlers employees? Technically, no. Like I've said before, 1099s, independent contractors. But were we allowed to work anywhere else? Nope. Were we allowed to take a job from someone else? No, we were not. Were we allowed to do an interview that the WWE didn't approve? We were not. While I technically wasn't an employee, did I consider myself an employee? You bet I did. Are WWE wrestlers part of SAG? No. Do I assume Batista, Cena, Rock, Austin, do I assume they're a part of the union? Of course they are. Your regular wrestlers, are we a part of SAG? Absolutely not. Are WWE wrestlers on steroids? See the Do WWE Wrestlers section. Are WWE wrestlers friends in real life? Do you like everyone you work with? Probably not. Same in our business. There's guys and girls that rub you the wrong way. Are WWE wrestlers drug tested? We definitely were. It wasn't often. After the wellness policy happened, I know they started testing guys more and more. Do I think it's a good deal? You bet I do. This one's long. Are WWE wrestlers allowed to use steroids? Okay. I would say see the other sections other than one word. One word in here changes this whole sentence up, and that's the word right there, allowed. Allowed, no. But in my day, did maybe they look the other way? I believe they did. And people are really curious about steroids. Are WWE wrestlers allowed to smoke weed? I don't believe they were ever allowed to do it back in my day. They might have looked the other way. They probably viewed it as it's not, as long as it's not affecting them in ring, as long as it's not keeping them from getting to the arena on time, it's not a big deal. Personally, I never saw anybody smoking during my time, but I worked with RVD. Do I think he wasn't smoking? Of course he was. Yeah, definitely. I think he'd be the first to tell you. Are WWE wrestlers rich? Do I believe I was rich as a WWE wrestler? I knew I was making more money than a lot of people were making. But then again, I also knew that there were guys making so much more than I was making. And also, I feel like I was rich just for the fact that I was able to have the experiences that the WWE gave me. Next, how do WWE wrestlers not get hurt? Trust and practice. And if you're out there and you're training to be in this business, trust the person you're working with and make sure that you have drilled and got so much practice that everything you're going to do is already second nature. How do WWE wrestlers get paid? See the win section earlier in this video. How do WWE wrestlers bleed. It's called a gig. What's a gig? A gig is a tiny little razor blade. A lot of times guys would tape it up and they would put it in their hand. I would always tape it up and put it in my wrist tape. And then that way I could take one piece of tape off, grab it. We would take the gig out, you take it, you hit your head, and then twist. It's gonna open up your blood capillaries, they're gonna pour out. A lot of guys, if they know they're gonna get color for that night, they might take like a baby aspirin or something. Why? Because it thins your blood. The minute you gig, you're gonna bleed more. I was allergic to aspirin, so my very first match that I had to get color was Undertaker, Royal Rumble. I told Taker backstage, hey man, I'm allergic to aspirin. I'm not gonna be able to bleed that much. That's when he had the bright idea of, let's take a couple shooters. And me being a Jack fan, him being a Jack fan, I was okay with that. How do WWE wrestlers travel? I would always take a flight, obviously, living in Virginia, but then having to get to Oklahoma. I wasn't going to drive to Oklahoma. So they would fly me to wherever the closest airport was for the first show. But how are we getting to that second show? Well, we're renting a car. And a lot of times guys would rent the most economical car possible. They would pile four guys into it. We'll fly to one town, drive to all the rest. How do WWE wrestlers do steroids? How do WWE wrestlers win? I'm assuming you're talking about the match and not just winning life in general. Most people are going to be familiar with is a 1-2-3 pinfall victory right in the center of a ring. How do WWE wrestlers know when to end the match? For the most part, it's going to be when the ref tells you, but some guys, they just know how to feel it. They have that internal clock in their head that they're counting down the whole time. How do WWE wrestlers remember their moves? My encouraging word that I give to all new wrestlers is get to the point to where you learn to be able to wrestle and put a match together where you're not having to remember everything. Because trust me, when you wrestle a match that way, and I've done it so many times, it's so much. It's so hard to remember, and you're backstage and you're going over everything and you get terrified that you're gonna forget. So that's why I encourage guys, learn how to work in the ring with the guy. How do WWE wrestlers hide their junk? In the garage. You get a good pair of trunks. Yeah, sometimes you're on display. What you see is what you get. How do WWE wrestlers punch? Great question. When I first got on the road and I started wrestling house shows, I threw a punch in a match, and I think I threw it against Bill DeMott. And Bill didn't complain about it because I didn't hit him, but backstage, the agent at the time told me not to punch anymore until I learned how to do it. I remember I was driving it was one week that I was on the road by myself. I had my own rental car. The whole trip, I would practice my punches on the steering wheel. My goal was to hit the steering wheel without honking the horn. But if I didn't feel the steering wheel, then I wasn't doing it good enough, well enough. How do WWE wrestlers train? Okay, now, I'm assuming you mean wrestling training. If you're trying to turn, a love into a career, find the best people, the best places to train, and just put everything into it. Don't only work on trying to get good at your offensive moves. Work with other people, because while they're working on their offensive moves, selling's half the business. How do WWE wrestlers in the book? Where do WWE wrestlers live? You can live anywhere. Anywhere that you have access to air travel, because they would always fly us all in on the same day. It did benefit guys to live on the East Coast. Well, why is that? Most of the shows we did were on the East Coast, and with the time difference, guys that were on the West Coast were leaving at god-awful times in the morning on the day of a show. I mean, they might be leaving their house, at 3 a.m. Most guys lived on the East Coast, but you could live anywhere. Where do WWE wrestlers train? Obviously, Tough Enough, we trained at tracks And then once I left tracks and once Tough Enough was over, I trained at HWA, Heartland Wrestling Association, under the tutelage of Les Thatcher in Cincinnati, Ohio. Where do WWE wrestlers buy their gear? Once I got on the road and I started, getting gear on a more regular basis, we had a guy actually at the show who he was probably making a decent living because he would make my gear and he would make countless of the other guys and girls gear on the show, and he was extremely talented. Guys have different places to get their gear. I got lucky when it comes to having easy money and then having someone right there on the live shows. Did the WWE pay for our gear? They did not. But could you make money off of your gear? Absolutely you could. Where do WWE wrestlers work out? On the road, we work out wherever we can. Gyms would, most of the times and in most cities, I would say 90% of the cities we would go to, gyms knew we were coming. Guys would go in there and we had a good relationship with most of the gyms. We would throw them tickets on the side. They would come to the show, and a lot of them, they just wanted to have wrestlers in there. I mean, who's going to have a gym and not want Roman Reigns to come in? And whenever we would go someplace and these people were steadfast with, you can work out here, but we're charging you. No problem. My hand always went to the back of my wallet. I did not want to cause a scene, and I was not going to big league or big time anybody. I have no problem. I'll pay the 10, 20 bucks, whatever it costs for a day pass. Where do WWE wrestlers stay? For the most part, when I was traveling, I traveled with 3 different people. When I first broke into the business, I traveled with Al Snow for a little while. Al and I, we were more in the Red Roof Inn, Holiday Inn, type of more economical. Then I rode with Devon. Devon always wanted to save a little bit of money, but Devon also wanted to be comfortable. After Devon, then I started riding with Randy Orton. Me and Randy both had the same philosophy, and that was, we will pay a little bit extra for comfort. Side note story. Some guys room together because obviously if you're getting one room, you're cutting your hotel bill for the week in half. I tried it one night. I ended up having to split a room with Umaga, Eki, and with Rosie from 3 Minute Warning. I learned very quickly, and this was the only night, I learned you do not, and I repeat, you do not room with Samoans. They literally were the loudest snorers I'd ever heard in my entire life. I thought they were yelling. I took a pillow and I went down and I put a pillow on a pool chair and I laid back and I tried to sleep on a pool chair. They were snoring that loud. Where do WWE wrestlers stay? In London? The WWE is really good at having everything planned out. And I mean, we would arrive at an overseas location and it was almost like clockwork. We'd get off the bus and they would be handing us our room so we didn't have to individually check in. So they make it to where it's very seamless. You get off, grab your bags and go immediately up to your room because they've taken care of all that in advance. Now, I'm Maven, a former WWE wrestler, and today we're going to be busting some WWE myths. WWE wrestlers get paid more for bleeding or performing high-risk stunts during matches. The main determining factor when it comes to pay in a wrestling match during my time was your position on the card. Obviously, if you're wrestling in one of the first 2, 3 matches of the night, you're gonna get paid a little bit less. If you're in the mid-tier, you're gonna get paid a little bit more. And if you're one of the top 2 matches, that means you're a top guy and you're gonna get paid top guy money. There is one exception, and that exception was danger. If you went out and took a hellacious bump, or if you did something that was just crazy at the time, we could expect to see an increase in our salaries. We could expect to see an increase in our pay for that event. I know for a fact, talking to Devon, asking him about those legendary TLC matches and finally mustering up the nerve, asking him, man, what'd you get for those? And he told me the risk level with those matches, yeah, they made more, and rightfully so. For this myth, I have to admit, It is indeed true. You don't get paid more for bleeding, so for that reason, I'm gonna hold the false one back here. Not for bleeding. Now, hell, bleeding happens. It's part of the business. Older wrestlers would use younger wrestlers to help them pass drug tests. Not gonna go into this because I am not a tattletale, but it's true. Wrestlers get injured on purpose to take time off. It is tough to be on the road. It's just a grind. And when you're on the road, you don't have an off season. You're away from your family. And for some of the top guys, I've mentioned John Cena before, but the one thing you learn early in your career is once you're taking off television, it's not like that 10 minutes that you were gonna wrestle is just held open with a picture of you saying, we can't wait till this asshole gets back. No, they're gonna put someone else in that spot. And you never know. That person might be the superstar of a lifetime. They might get over more than you, making it easier to forget about you once you come back from injury. Now, that said, if you did get injured, sometimes it was just a way to just appreciate getting some time off. And, you know, besides healing an injury, it was a decent level set, as long as the injury wasn't too serious, just to get some time at home, just to sleep in your own bed for a solid few weeks. So for this myth, I have to say it's busted, it's false. I never knew one person that got injured on purpose just to get time off. Those spots on that roster, man, they're coveted. WWE shows are sometimes rewritten minutes before going live. Keep in mind, I was really never in production meetings, but I would see writers and everyone scrambling last minute. And there were times even I was handed different scripts, or, hey, Maven, we were gonna do this pre-tape. Nah, scratch that. We're gonna do it in the ring, or just cut it all together. You have to be able to move on the fly. Sometimes timing might not work out, or just whatever might happen. But this one, it's actually true. A live show, it's chaos, but it's organized chaos. That I will give them. WWE doesn't care about the health and safety of its wrestlers. My answer you probably won't agree with. I think they do care. I know that anytime I was injured during my time, did they want me to perform? Obviously they did, but the moment they knew I was injured, they didn't fight me on it. The night I broke my elbow in Des Moines wrestling Matt Hardy. Again, I come off a move I'd done 1,000 times, a high cross body. Matt ducks under, I land, and when I land, I just landed wrong and it shattered my elbow. And I would find myself 3 days later getting surgery on this elbow. I went and told the agents, man, I think I messed my elbow up. And they told me, sleep on it tonight, let us know tomorrow if you can go. Because sometimes you just might have a bruise, you just need to work out and you can actually wrestle. Go to the show the next day, had my arm literally strapped to my side. I couldn't even move it. And they immediately, we're sending you home. And I had a flight home directly, an appointment with my orthopedist on Monday, and was in surgery on Tuesday. So that doesn't happen without some sort of caring. Now, I mean, do I think they cared about Maven Huffman, the human being? I don't know, probably not. But do I think they cared about Maven Huffman, the investment? More than likely, yes. But I still have to say that this one is false, because whether they cared about me as a person or as an investment, they still cared. WWE wrestlers leak insider information to journalists. I'm not gonna say who, so don't ask me. Get mad at me if you want. I'm not a stooge. But guys like Dave Meltzer, guys who run the dirt sheets, they're not pulling this stuff out of their ass. They have guys on the inside. During my day, I knew a few guys who would talk to them. So for this one, that 1,000% true.
Only wrestlers are allowed in the WWE locker room. During my time, it was just frowned upon having anyone in the locker room that wasn't one of the boys. I mean, the locker room is for the boys. Guys would feel comfortable with taking, their clothes, obviously off, hanging them up, taking expensive watches off. And there was many times I would just take my wallet out, put it right where I was changing, and not think a second about it, because I trusted everyone in that locker room. And the only way you can get trust is by not having tons of people in the locker room. That said, I mean, there was always, event staff or stadium staff roaming around, and no one was definitely watching the locker room. What I will say is there was nobody that had brought their buddies in, and took them back in the locker room. A few times I had some friends come to some shows, and even after the show, I would have them come meet me underneath the arena. I would tell the security guy there with me, let them jump the barricade, take them backstage, but I never would take them in the locker room. Place was just off limits. It was a sacred place. For that reason, I have to say, this one is definitely true. Although there were times it occasionally would happen. So I'm gonna hold the false up down here. We wanted to strive for this, but occasionally we got that. Wrestlers' win-loss records affect their pay. This one always cracks me up. I've had fans come up to me before and tell me, watched you wrestle. The match I watched, you lost. Like I give a shit. Anytime they say, I saw you lose, I correct them. No, you saw me get paid. And Al Snow had the best shirt. Pin me, pay me. And to have the hero, you have to have a villain. To have a good guy, you have to have a bad guy. And to have a winner, there must be a loser. And if the guys are both main event guys, there's no way that whoever wins is just gonna make more money than whoever loses. For that reason, this one is most definitely not true. This one is false. This myth is busted. WWE manipulates crowd noise. I'm gonna introduce you to a phrase, a wrestling phrase, and that phrase is canned heat. Now, what is canned heat? Occasionally a crowd or someone's not getting the reaction the truck expected, and the truck can actually manipulate this noise during a live broadcast. They can put any sound they want to be reflective of the audience if they're actually not getting the audience reaction they're looking for. They bank on the TV crowd. That's where they're making their money. That's where they're getting these gigantic Sky Rizzy commercials out, and they're getting these huge Chevy ads out, and they are indeed making their bankroll. And for this, they're going to make sure that the show they want to portray is the show the TV audience gets. And one of the ways they do that is with canned heat. So for that reason, I have to say that's 1000% true. Wrestlers need permission from the WWE to get tattoos. During my time, you weren't getting a tattoo, unless your name was Randy Orton, and getting away with it. If anybody came and if there was any change to your overall look, you had to get it approved and okayed from the office. I went in with horrendous tattoos that product of stupid youth. And there were different tattoos that I wanted to get, ones I probably wish I didn't have now. However, I waited till I was out of that business to get what I wanted at the time. I wasn't gonna give them a reason to A, get mad at me, B, fire me, or C, take me off television. So that's an easy one, and for that reason, this one is definitely true. WWE has strict dietary regulations for all its wrestlers. I'm going to attack this myth by attacking two words: strict and regulations. WWE's never going to be with you in catering. They're never going to send a dietitian to your home to put a eating regimen up. They're relying on you to be an adult. Know what's best for you. Know what your body can metabolize. Know what gives you the best opportunity to look your best when in the ring. You want to be in that top position. You want to be earning the highest checks that you possibly can. And a lot of times the way to do that is to just eat right. We're all not Shelton Benjamin, who can eat whatever the hell he wants and still look like $1 million. Some of us are mere mortals, and we had to place the strict regulations on ourselves. WWE wasn't putting us on it. We were doing it ourselves. So for this myth, I give it a false. WWE plants fake fans in the audience to start chants or reactions. I could be wrong here, but I can't ever remember them planting any fans in the audience. I can't ever remember hearing that during this match, this chant will begin, or during this match, they're going to start cheering at this spot because, well, we have plants in the audience. Now, we did have several fans that were just at every show. We had one guy who was known as the super fan. I don't remember him starting cheers or being a plant. Occasionally, he was used in the show, but to this day, I don't know. I don't know if he was buying his ticket or if the WWE was planting him in that front row location. I do know he had damn good seats each and every show, and he was always there, and all the boys knew and kind of appreciated him. So for this one, and for the word plants, it's hard for me to say that this one is true. This myth is busted. It is false. Special WWE wrestlers get their own private locker room. I've heard the stories about guys in WCW getting their own locker room, or I've heard the stories of guys requesting their own locker room. I can only talk about how it was when I was there, when Stone Cold was doing the gimmick where he was running the show and he had his own locker room. It makes no sense having Stone Cold have his own locker room for TV purposes and then go and change with the rest of the boys. Well, that's just dumb. That just makes no sense. So in that case, they might have their own locker room, but it's not because they requested it. It's because it was a necessity. So for that reason, I have to say this is a mixture of both. Yes, special wrestlers do get their own locker room, but it's false, because special in the I'm special, I'm too good to dress with the peasants. No, that never happened. WWE wrestlers don't have any input on their character. There's a lot of times that the writers or the production staff might come to you with ideas or we hope you can do this. And you might say yes or no. And the flip side of that is sometimes you might know that you're good at something and be like, yo, let me put this in their ear. Hopefully lean them in my direction as to what I'm good at. And I've seen it work. I've seen people that go from a bad gimmick to finally finding what they're good at. And for that, I give you John Cena. Stephanie found out John was an amazing freestyle rapper. And once they found out that, and that was from John, John gave that input to them. And well, I would say it worked. And for that reason, I have to say this one is 1000% false. Wrestlers probably don't have as much input as they would like on their character, but they do have input, definitely. WWE contracts include clauses prohibiting wrestlers from engaging in dangerous hobbies. I kind of feel like an idiot admitting this, but you know I'm going to be brutally honest, even if it makes me look bad. I don't know everything that was in my WWE contract. What I do know, however, is there was nobody that was going to get injured outside of the ring. And I'm not going to turn this wrestler in, but I do remember during my time someone getting injured while skiing. And this person sucked it up, waited to be actually at a show, and then put out that they were indeed injured. Why is that? During my time, don't know how it is nowadays, but during my time, the health insurance that we had only covered in-ring injuries. Now, what does that mean? If I broke my arm and needed surgery in the ring, which I did, which I got, which was covered 100% by the WWE, no problem. If I was riding my motorcycle down the street, clipped a curb, flipped over, and broke the same elbow, I don't think my health insurance would have covered it. Was that clause in my contract? Hell, it might have been. And if I would have been smart and not a 24-year-old imbecile, I probably would have read it or had someone at least that knew contracts read it and tell me if it was in there. I've been wrong before. I just don't think it's today. But I'm led to believe that myth is true. WWE will punish wrestlers by sending them back to developmental territories. It's crazy that I've actually witnessed this firsthand. Developmental territories in my day were vastly different than they are now. Now, NXT, it's another form of a television show. So going back there, although it might be a demotion, hell, somebody might see that as just an opportunity to revamp, redo their character and maybe start afresh. In my day, if you were sent back to OVW, Ohio Valley, or HWA Heartland Wrestling after you'd been up to the big show, there was a reason for it, and it wasn't a good one. It was not the place that you wanted to go. That said, there were times that you did go back to OVW. I remember I went back twice. Why did they send me back there twice? Well, one time I was coming off a broken leg. The second time I was coming off of a broken arm. I went down there and mainly to get my wind back. There's no cardio that prepares you for a wrestling match. The only way you can get in wrestling shape is by wrestling. So they know that. They send you back down to get a couple matches under your belt. Obviously, get back used to bumping, get your body back calloused up. But I do remember him sending the Big Show to OVW. And why did they do that? Well, because they were punishing him. Why? I don't know what they were punishing him for. I know what the reasons they said they were, but you never know. They might have had different reasons. And to do that, they sent him down to OVW. It seemed to work because he came back a bigger and better star. So for that, I have to say, this myth, it's actually 100% true. WWE wrestlers can't accept acting roles without company approval. Back when I was there, you weren't doing anything, and I mean anything, without company approval. We couldn't even have agents or managers. That was a no-go. And it was always crazy to me because we're independent contractors. Now, again, there's always going to be someone that bucks the trend. There's always going to be someone who is more important than everyone else, and that's just, hell, the fact of the matter. So you were always going to have your Rocks and your Austins, who I don't know for a fact, but I'm assuming they probably had managers, agents that were getting them work. But I would feel comfortable stepping out on a pretty damn sturdy limb saying any work those men got them, it was still with the WWE's approval. You weren't doing anything, and I mean anything, without the say-so from the office. And occasionally, people did think that they got too big for the company. I remember China leaving and people thinking she was probably going to be the next one to step in the Hollywood spotlight. And for whatever reason, it just didn't happen. You know, she found out that having millions of eyeballs on her 2 times a week on live television was probably the best place for her. Vince knew this. The top brass knew this. And the company had you exactly where they wanted you. And that was with your back up against the wall. So for this reason, you know it. This myth is true. WWE wrestlers get to choose their entrance music. Depending on where you are in the card, depending on your worth within the company, you might have a say. If you're obviously a John Cena who can produce your own entrance music, well, that's the absolute best scenario imaginable. If you're a guy like me and had to go out to anything they gave you and had to be happy with it, hell, they could have had the keyboard cat playing my entrance music, and guess what? There was nothing I could have said about it. So for that, I'm giving it a false, but I'm quickly putting the false away because, like I mentioned, there are the John Cenas of the world, and for that, I'm also giving it a true. Question, why does WWE hate when stars get over on their own? I remember being in developmental territory, and I was in HWA, but we had OVW right down the road. This was during the time of Jim Cornette running OVW, and you know, anybody that knows the business knows Cornette is a true living legend. Dave Bautista, who everyone knows went on to be a mega superstar, was in OVW at the time, and the gimmick that I'm assuming Cornette bestowed upon him was that of Leviathan, and they shot vignettes of Dave coming out of the lake, of the river and everything. He had contacts in, and he just looked he looked like something you've never seen before. But the moment they put him up on WWE television, that gimmick was dead. It was gone. And I could never understand that. Well, I do know one thing. I know the WWE likes to own the rights of gimmicks, and it's my belief, could be wrong, but I also think they like having the satisfaction knowing that they built a star, they built a gimmick, knowing, hey, Batista's what he is because of our foresight, because of we thought he should be, not because of what Jim Cornette or anyone else thinks. Why does WWE, or anyone for that matter, care about title reign records when the whole thing is scripted to begin with? It's a good question. In my opinion, there is a misbelief that the person that's holding the belt is the most important person in the company. So when Roman Reigns has the title for umpteen, 100 days, he's the person at the top of your company. Here's why that's a disbelief, and here's why I don't believe that. The person below the title holder is usually who the company sees as their main draw, their main money maker. So it's the person chasing Roman. That's the person they're banking all their hopes and dreams on. That's all the eggs they're putting in a basket. If you're at home and you're hearing Roman Reigns has the title and lost it to Cody, okay, that sounds like something. But Roman Reigns has the title for a record length, then you at home are thinking, wow, okay, now Cody's done a little bit more. Next question, why does WWE do the thing after the interviews? I'm gonna read verbatim the follow-up, what he is saying the thing is. You know the thing where the superstar is like, I've said everything I need to, turns around, walks away, but then they pan the camera to the interviewer and stay there for a few seconds before cutting back to the ring. Anytime you can add a little bit of extra oomph on anything, anytime you can make something appear to be more important, and a camera panning back to an interviewer holding a mic, maybe looking shocked, dazed, maybe looking mad, almost in a way telling you how you should feel. I think the pan back to the interviewer, I think that's also allowing you, the fans, that time to digest. Why does WWE act Like, it was never called WWF. I was one that was there during the name change, and personally, I didn't think it was gonna be a death nail to the company, but I thought it was gonna be a lot harder to unlearn WWF as opposed to WWE, but I was 100% wrong. I also know that the fact that the WWF logo is owned by World Wildlife Fund, there's even a financial burden against using that, those 3 letters. So why would you, I don't know, I see no upside to bringing up WWF, but that's my opinion why they don't use it anymore. Is every single detail of WWE matches scripted or no? No. Depends on who is in the ring though. Some people want to have as many details called as possible. They might want to know, I'm gonna throw 3 punches. On the 3rd one, you duck, hit the ropes, I'll turn, hit me with a flying forearm as I come up, kick me as I bend over, you hit the ropes, throw that leg drop down, I go down, go for a cover, 1, 2, kick out, come over, boom, I kick you in the stomach, cut you off. Now that's wanting to have every single detail called. Here's the downside and drawback to that. What if the fans what if they're not with it? What if I throw those 2 punches and the person's supposed to duck on the 3rd one, but the fans are cheering, loving it? Well, I want to have the ability to say, on the 2nd punch, tell my opponent, take more, boom, hit him back, keep punching him till I get him back into the corner. He can cut me off another way. That's how I learned when I got actually out of WWE, to just listen to the fans. And if you're doing something and they're not feeling it, do something else. A lot of WWE matches are scripted on television. Why, might you ask? Well, on TV, it's a bit different because you have a certain time that you have to hit. And a 6-minute match means 6 minutes. They're gonna go to commercial. They're gonna play that ad for whatever. Is every detail scripted? My answer, no, not every. But more is scripted than I or a lot of guys from my generation would like. Is it easy for WWE wrestlers to get free food at restaurants while traveling? Oh, good question. It's hit or miss. It depends who you are. I don't want to say name recognition value, but that does help. Guys that were mid-carders like I was, man, it's hit or miss. Sometimes we go places and people would recognize us and want to comp our meals. I never went into any place expecting it. I won't say who, but when I was on the road, me and Randy we jumped in a car with someone and we went to a restaurant and they didn't have tables to actually seat us at the moment, and this person told the hostess, I'm so and so. Me and Randy just looked at each other like, what the fuck? Like, we just couldn't believe, because that just wasn't our style. And I don't want to say it was embarrassing, but it was embarrassing. If something was offered, hell, I'd take it. That's for damn sure. Still do. Doesn't happen though that often. Wish it did. What are the harsh realities of being a WWE wrestler? And great question. I actually did a video, consequences of being a WWE wrestler. Highly, highly encourage you to go watch it. I was up all night, with back and leg pain. My leg would not stop cramping. I mean, would I get those just being old? Without wrestling and just playing sports my whole life? Maybe. I know that last week I had to get 2 gigantic needles, one in my shoulder, one in my lower back. I know that comes from wrestling. So physical limitations and physical ailments are an obvious harsh reality of being a WWE wrestler, but one that you might not think of when people expect stuff from you, and like you feel like a dick if you can't say yes. I get 20 requests for podcasts every day. Would I love it if I could sit at home and get paid to do podcasts all day? Absolutely. Sit in my underwear and do it? Yeah, sure, why not? But unfortunately,
I can't do that. Unfortunately, I have responsibilities, and it just sucks. I know, cry me a river. Yeah, Maven, it sure must suck to be you, doesn't it? I literally feel like the guy complaining that my shoes don't fit. And there's a guy beside me with no feet. Why do they exaggerate the weight of some wrestlers? Good question. When I was there, and I don't know if everyone didn't do this. Obviously, the women didn't, but a lot of guys would do the 220 rule, 2 inches, 20 pounds. I know I exaggerated. I never exaggerated my height. I'm 6'2". If I tell people I'm 6'4", they're gonna be like, no, you're not. And hell, I've stood beside people that are 6'2" and kind of looked up at them. And then that's when I tell them, nah, you're 6'3", because I want to be 6'2". I know I exaggerated my weight for years. I always said I weighed probably a little bit more than I actually did. When I first got into WWE, I think I weighed around 205, but they still billed me 220. It's easier to stand in the ring against a guy who weighs 285 and I weigh 240. It just sounds better. If I get in the ring and, Undertaker, who was 300 pounds, and Maven, 195, you're like, man, what? No. This isn't a wrestling match. This is assault. How do male wrestlers deal with boners in the ring? When you're out there performing, competing, and you could have the divas, the hottest divas, wearing the sexiest costumes across from you, and they could be doing stuff that made Vince do the over animated gulp, and that's the like anything arousal in your mind while you're performing, it's so far removed. Yeah, we're doing a job. Backstage, I've never heard one wrestler come back and be like, man, I couldn't take that flat back because my damn dick was hard. Man, it's just not gonna happen, never. Why do wrestlers clap their hands sometimes before a move? Just to get the crowd excited, get the crowd amped, get them off their feet, get them off their phone, get them into the action. Once again, we're out there the whole time. All we're trying to do is elicit a reaction from you. And sometimes, a simple clap they can go from this to, hell, all right, I'll clap with you. And then it might make them pay attention a little bit more. Clapping their hands before a move might be a timing thing. It could help, maybe they're getting ready to do something and they need a specific, beat or a specific timing on something. If they go to try a move and it works, and maybe beforehand they clapped twice and that helped them get the timing before going, well, the next night, why would they try something different? Why do wrestlers tape up their fingers, wrists, or fists? I always taped my wrists simply because from my days playing baseball, I always had wrist issues, and I would tape my wrist before every single game just to give me that stability. Well, once I transitioned into the ring, jumping, doing a drop kick, landing, doing anything where I had to land and take a face bump and post myself as I was going down, taped wrists just helped me. Plus, I think it's just a cleaner look. I look back at me in my early career. I believe the match I had where I won the hardcore title against Undertaker, I don't think I had my wrist taped. And it just doesn't look right. To me, it just looks weird. Why they tape their fingers, it could be a lot of guys, maybe they might be some guys would hide gigs in their finger tapes. But for the most part, it's a stability. Maybe they have a finger that they've hurt. Maybe, like I said, I've broken every fingers on my hands beside my thumbs. And a lot of times I would just have to tape them together just for stability. If a wrestler's taping their fist, that tells me that a part of their gimmick is punching and throwing punches. So I would say it's some performative, some gimmick related, and a lot of it just mostly for just the overall look and appeal. Next question, why do wrestlers need to ask permission from other wrestlers if using their finishing moves? A finishing move, that's like somebody's significant other. That's someone's spouse. You gonna go to your buddy's house and be like, hey, where's Jenny at? Yeah, get her down here. We got our reservations at Morton's in 20 minutes. If you wanna get heat in a wrestling locker room, yeah, go out and use somebody's finishing move. You will get lambasted backstage. Even once someone retires, once someone leaves, it's still common courtesy, common practice to just ask, can I use this move? Hell, maybe I should have stole one though. Maybe I would have lasted longer. God, yeah, man. Maybe I should have just went out there and told her, I'm doing the rock bottom, damn it. If Rock's got a problem with it, he knows where to find me. Yeah, that wouldn't happen. Where do wrestlers get their gear from, and do they get to decide on their outfit? We actually had a gear guy on staff. He would make a lot of the guys' gears. Sometimes, people would need a rush job. I know when I fought The Undertaker for the hardcore title, at that point, I still did not have wrestling trunks. So they made me a pair of immediate trunks. And if you go back and watch during that match, I'm pulling them down the entire time. They're almost like a cheap pair of boxer shorts that ride up on you. The same guy that would make those trunks for me would go on to make my next pair of black trunks. Then they were a little bit better fitting, had a better graphic on them, had the sheen, and they were a better material. Did I have to pay for them? And I know that wasn't part of the question, but yes, I did. Every pair of trunks, these guys are there, but they're there working. A pair of trunks might cost me, I believe it was like $130, but well worth the money. And did I have a say in it? To an extent, I did. Obviously, if I wanted to, put on my trunks two big middle fingers sticking up at the crowd, the office would have said, nah, you're not getting away with that. But when I went to them and said, hey, I'd like them in this, and this color, they didn't have any problem with that. Yeah, just go for it. When I told them that I wanted my logo on the backside and then just a big gigantic M right over my crotch, they had no problem with that. Your top level guys, they get a little bit more say. But once you have apparel that they can turn into merchandise, and merchandise we all know means dollars, then the office is gonna step in a little bit more just because there's a financial element to it. And they know that, well, if we do this, if we take this character this way, we can make money off of it. Before you get to the WWE, you need to find people who will make gear for you. I was fortunate enough to become friends early in my career with Easy Money. And Easy Money, after his stint in WCW, was in developmental with me at HWA in Cincinnati. Well, Easy made a lot of his money and still does to this day making wrestling gear. Wrestling gear, it can make or break a character. Good gear, something that the fans want to get behind, it can be that little added touch that helps a wrestler go straight to the top. Why do so many wrestlers choose to live in Florida? When you get into the world of professional wrestling, so much of your life immediately becomes travel. The 2 days you're at home, you want to have a good home base to go to. You want to A, have good weather, and B, have some place that's just not a chore getting to. You don't want to have to take 5 flights just to get home, or 5 flights just to leave where you live. Florida provides both. And Florida is just a good retirement destination. Obvious financial benefits. I know when I moved to Florida, it was crazy because I moved to Tampa, and then all of a sudden I was around 5 or 6 of the boys. And I know a lot of you might be thinking that guys choose to live in Florida because NXT in the developmental territory is there, and it might be a reason some guys are moving there now. But even before that, even before developmental was a thing, wrestlers were still flocking to Florida. It's just it's hard to beat having sunny days. It's really hard to beat.
How often, when, and where do wrestlers practice moves? Once you get to the WWE and you're a traveling wrestler, obviously, the one way to continue your rise is expanding your move set, your arsenal of what you can do in the ring. There's no better feeling than performing a move that the crowd's never seen and just hearing that, ooh. I know when I did the backstabber for the first time, that was the exact reaction I got. And then to top that, an even better reaction is when you go back through Gorilla and you go down the steps and the boys are like, oh yeah, where'd you pick that up? I liked it. That's the best feeling in the world. One thing we do get to do is get in the ring before shows, and that's the perfect place to practice, to get your feel. I know in an earlier question, somebody asked about clapping, get your timing down. And they might have a crash pad that they pull out if you're doing a high risk move and you just want to get the rotations down, or you just want to figure out how you're going to land. So you can go over and practice moves before the show, every show if you want to, as long as you get there early enough. How do wrestlers prepare for matches? Some guys like to prepare for matches by going over and getting the person they're going to work with and going through and kind of walking through all the moves. Other guys want no part of that. I know Booker T was notorious for, before he would go out there, he'd be backstage jumping rope fiercely. And I'm talking about a full-on like boxer would jump rope and he's breaking a sweat. When I asked him, man, what are you doing? And he would tell me, I'm blowing myself up. I'm getting that first one out of the way so when I go out there, I'm already into my second wind. And once you get into that second wind, you can wrestle a lot longer without blowing yourself up. Other guys would try not to do, and they would save as much of their energy until they were out there. The way I would prepare was kind of a cross between how Booker would do it and how just other guys would save their energy. I like to get a good sweat going before I went up to Gorilla. Obviously stretch, loosen myself up as much as possible. And I wouldn't do the jumping of the rope, but I would do free squats, the Hindu squats. And I always found that if I did about 50 Hindu squats in a row, then that would elevate my heart rate. That would get a good sweat going. And then I could immediately go up and I would have, I would be almost right in the, right at the tail end of just getting that heart rate elevated to the place I wanted to be. How often do wrestlers get to go home while working a touring schedule? Again, that depends on who the wrestler is. A normal schedule for me would be Friday morning, take the first flight out. It could be a 6 a.m. flight, which meant I was getting to the airport by 5, which meant I was leaving my house by 4:15. And then we would have house shows, untelevised events, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Now, I wasn't going home for any of these shows. I was on the road traveling, staying in new hotels, renting new cars, maybe even taking more flights to get to the next town. Monday, we would have our live show if we didn't have a pay-per-view on Sunday. And then Tuesdays, typically, first flight out, they would fly us back. So Tuesdays, around midday, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, I would have home, I would be back at home. It's weird because the whole idea is you want to be popular, you want to be a top guy, and top guys, they don't get to go home much. I know John Cena's schedule for years was insane. It was crazy. I know he would probably go months without going home, or if he did go home, maybe go home for a day or two. All depends. However, I'd go back and do every single bit of it again. I absolutely loved it. Why do wrestlers hook the leg when they pin each other? Good question. It gives the illusion that you're in a real fight even more. The great wrestlers were phenomenal at just adding to the to the struggle. Orton was great at this. Orton would grab the leg and then almost lean his entire back on someone, looking like he's putting pressure down to keep someone's shoulders pinned to that mat 1, 2, 3. Because, like Al Snow says, the whole point of a wrestling match is to pin someone. So the more that you look like you're in a struggle, the more that you look like you're fighting to get this person to keep that person's shoulders down, the more the people at home believe. How much money are non-major company wrestlers making? When I left the WWE in 2005, I was at a peak level of earning potential for the indies, for the independents. And if you ever hear someone say the indies, they mean independent wrestling promotions, promotions that are not backed by a big company, an AEW, a TNA, a WWE. I know as soon as people leave the WWE, that's when their potential is at its highest. Me personally, I could ask for as much as $1,000 to $2,000 for a match the moment I left. But that's because I still had name value. I had name recognition. As more days click off the calendar that remove you from being on WWE television, your name value goes down the shitter. The less money you can make over time. Before the YouTube channel started, I mean, my name value, my name recognition might have been worth maybe around $300 to $500. It depends on the show, depends on also who is running the show and how good of a booker they are. How do wrestlers' naming work across organizations? Some wrestlers are able to use the same name everywhere, while others are not. It all depends on what the WWE owns as far as what they have trademarked. I know when I was wrestling under Maven, which happens to be my real God-given Christian birthright name. So they couldn't hold on to that name and keep me from using it. Hell, it's my real name. But what they could do is make sure that I had to add my last name, Maven Huffman, if I wanted to use it to make money for myself. If it's a small event, small show, they're not going to care. You know, if somebody's throwing up flyers on the tilt-a-whirl at the local carnival with my name on it, that's not enough for the WWE legal to even get out of bed for. But I know when I got my job for the Home Shopping Network, they had to use my last name. They couldn't just put Maven, and it was a legal reason. They want to have full and complete ownership if something takes off, if someone becomes a superstar. John Cena is a superstar, but his real name is John Cena, so it's something that they can't necessarily trademark or keep John from using. The Rock, however, that's not Dwayne's real name. He is Dwayne Johnson. That's why once he developed and got his Hollywood career to the level that it is, he started going by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, because he wanted to have ownership of all that Dwayne Johnson did, not just what The Rock was out there doing. An example of someone who was able to use and carry over a name from company to company would be CM Punk. CM Punk had the name going into WWE. He owned the name. Therefore, he was able to carry the name and the trademark over to AEW. So it's almost like you got to have an immense belief in yourself. You almost have to gamble on yourself in a way, and you just have to make a name that they can't touch. Do wrestlers go by their real names backstage, or do they adopt their gimmick names? This is probably one of the questions since we started the channel almost a year ago that we've gotten the most. I know Batista, for instance, I always knew him as Dave. I always called him Dave backstage, and you know, if I see him to this day, I'm not to this Dave. If I see him to this day, I'm not gonna yell, "Hey Batista!" No, I'm gonna yell, "Hey Dave, yo, what's up, buddy?" Test was the same way. Test actually used to correct people when they would call him Test. He would always stop them and be like, "No, it's Andrew, it's Andrew." And it was one of the things that just endeared me to him. Other guys, man, Taker is in my phone as Taker. Some guys are their gimmick names. Some guys, that's their, that's just how they prefer to be addressed. It was the one reason that going into wrestling, I hated Maven growing up. I hated it. And it was because no one could get it right. I got called Maven, Melvin. A game in high school, I got called Megan by the PA announcer. Then once I got to the WWE and Maven actually became, a name that worked there, now I'm okay with it. When I was growing up, the name that I always wanted to wrestle under was Bishop. I don't know why, but I just always thought Bishop. That'd be a good wrestling name. But I ended up naming my dog Bishop. There was a case one time when we were on the road, and Randy, myself, and Jindrak found ourselves at a restaurant with Hunter and Rick. And on the way to the restaurant to kind of rib him a little bit, Jindrak came up with the idea, let's see who can call Hunter Paul the most at dinner. And I might have gotten 2 out, and the 2 I did were not comfortable. It just didn't roll off the tongue. Jindrak did it the entire dinner, and Jindrak found a reason to talk to him. Paul, hey Paul, you're right, Paul. Paul, what do you think of the? And inside, my gut was hurting. I wanted to explode with laughter because he did it straight faced, and he just never broke. And it was the funniest thing. And it probably annoyed Hunter to no ends. But it was just so weird to not hear of Hunter referred to as Hunter.
About gear, were you allowed to be creative with it, or did the WWE give you some pre-approved designs for you to get? The WWE told me that they wanted me in shorts. There was enough guys. There was guys like Jericho, and Edge at the time was wearing pants. Christian, there were plenty of guys wearing long pants. They wanted me in shorts. I had a say in the color schemes that I picked up on and that I chose, but for the most part, they were giving me their idea of what would make me the most desirable superstar for what they were looking for. Nothing was getting through without their approval and their okay. What was your experience with creative? Is the good idea to try and pitch your own creative ideas, or is that something that only the big dogs backstage can do without getting backlash for it? You're right. The bigger ups, the main eventers, they have way more control over that. My experience is a lot of guys coming in, they might pitch their ideas. They might think they know what's best for them. They'll listen to you. They'll listen to your ideas all day long. But in the end, they have in their mind what it is that they see you doing. Would you get in trouble backstage for pitching too many ideas? No. But you didn't also want to become the guy that, people ran the other way. John Cena is the only guy who I saw backstage let what he was good at, which was his mic skills and the rapping and everything. Once they got a hold to how good he was doing that, I guess he kind of did pick his own character, his own gimmick, and he ran with it. But it was still a Vince creation. Vince always wanted control. He wanted to know that if you become a star, it was due to him. What was your weirdest experience as a wrestler in the WWE? Something happened before a house show, a non-televised event one time that I do not recommend other wrestlers do. My flight was delayed getting to a city. The guys I was riding with at the time, they had to get to the show, and I was 2 hours delayed, not by my doing, but by the airlines. And I told him on my layover, just go, I'll find my way to the arena. I had no clue getting off this plane what I was gonna do. Fans would always camp out at the airports in baggage claims because they knew if we were coming to a specific town, all the wrestlers had to go through baggage claim, so that was the best place to stand out and get autographs, pictures, meet wrestlers, whatever. They were smart in that aspect. I'd go down to baggage claim, meet some fans. They asked me if I was on the show in a town that was about an hour and a half away. I told them I was. Asked them, do you guys have tickets for the show? They said they did not. So I made a deal with them. I said, if you guys can drive me to the arena, I'll get you guys 2 or 3 tickets for the show. They immediately jumped at the idea. And once my bags came out, we got in their car, and I had to put up with answering about an hour and a half of questions, but it was a great trade-off because it saved me a little bit of money. They got me to the show right at the nick of time. I remember literally walking in. Now, I warned the agents, but I walked in right as the show was starting, and on this night, I was the third match. So I had to immediately run in, get changed, get dressed, and go out and wrestle. But the fans that took me, I don't remember your names, but if you remember that, thank you so much. But definitely falls in the weird category.
What is the single most insane thing you've ever personally witnessed Vinnie Mac do? By far, it has to be him taking the stink face from Rikishi. But Vince did that for a reason. Vince wanted everyone to know, if I ask you to do something, it's because I'm willing to do it myself. What are you gonna tell him? I'm not gonna do that? Nah, he did it for a reason. The boys backstage knew why he was doing it, and it worked. Outside the ring, I guess the craziest thing I saw Vince do was when Hunter was about to marry Steph, they had his bachelor party at a gentleman's club. All the boys were there. I mean, the whole roster was at this club, and we were there for better part of the night, and then at the very end of the night, in comes Vince and Hunter at the exact same time. And it's just a surreal experience, you know, being in a strip club and seeing Vinnie Mac walk in. Just, that has to be the weirdest thing I saw him do, non-wrestling related. Do you have any say or control in your theme music? And did you ever get to meet Jim Johnston? So for those of you that don't know, Jim is the guy who has worked for the WWE for years. He's the one that makes all the iconic music, everything from Goldust music to Shawn's music to DX's music. That is done by Jim Johnston. I did meet him. I met him many times. Jim was a fixture. He's like a Kevin Dunn. Now, do I have any say in my theme music? Obviously, if you know anything about me, you know I did not like my theme music. So, did I have any say in my theme music? Of course I didn't. Obviously, if you're a top guy, you're gonna have a say in your music. Hunter having Motorhead do his music. When you're where I was, nah, you're going out to whatever they say. And it's actually become one of the, just the funniest things about my career, the fact that I didn't like my music. How far in advance is your character planned? Are you given much time to foreshadow character shifts? Characters in the WWE, they're not just thrown together. And whenever I was getting ready to be changed from a babyface, a good guy, to a heel, a bad guy, they did let me know probably a few months in advance, just so I could start thinking of the shift, and the shift in how I would wrestle different, the shift in how I would behave different once I came through the curtain, and just the shift of where I saw my character going. If they think something is going to get you over, meaning the crowd's going to react, and nothing happens, they're not going to ride it out too long. They might give it a few times out, but if it's not working, they're going to change on a fly. What's the most memorable fan interaction you have had? Probably twofold. One, I had a fan reach out to me after my time in the WWE and inform me that they were naming their child Maven. Obviously, I've never met another Maven in the world, so that was very cool. I remember meeting a family in Boston, and someone from backstage came and grabbed me while I was getting dressed, and they were just like, "There's this this family out there, and the kid's not doing too well, and he wants to meet you." And I was, who? He wants to meet me? I couldn't believe it. Walking out and seeing this little kid, and I think at the time he was, I want to say 6 or 7 or something, but he was a big fan. He had a sign and everything. And I still remember seeing the glow on his face by seeing me walk up to him, and it's going to be something that I remember for the rest of my life. A couple weeks ago, I had a guy taking his phone and angling it, and I could tell he was taking pictures of me, and finally I was like, "Come here." And seeing the smile on someone's face for what I did,
Man, that's the best feeling in the world. I love it. And I love it because I know one day it'll stop. I'm gonna enjoy it, and I'm gonna be humbled every time. And I've said it, when I meet you, you're making my day. I'm not making yours. Hi, Maven. Hi. Who was the stiffest wrestler you ever worked with? Now, what they mean by stiff is hard. They mean like, so if someone punches you and you actually feel it, that's stiff. Who was the stiffest wrestler that I ever worked with? I gotta be honest. To a lot of people, they think I was stiff, and I was. After working Bob, I laid things in, and Bob taught me that. Bob was never, ever doing anything that he didn't want in return. My question is, how do wrestlers call a match? Did you have to learn a lingo or shorthand to communicate in the ring? What about rehearsals? Did you ever run through matches or spots before the show, or is it called on the fly? Well, on non-televised shows, we have a little bit more leeway with being able to just call stuff on the fly. But for televised shows, we're calling pretty much everything backstage, before. Did we have rehearsals? Yes, we did. After we would get to a show at 1 o'clock and go through catering and eat and everything, that's when you would go to the ring and meet whoever you were working and your agent. You would get time cues, you would get everything, and you would start laying your match out. It's hard to call a match on the fly from beginning to end on a live show just because you have specific time cues to hit. And that's for everyone. That's not just for the lower tier guys, the upper tier guys too. Some of the older guys would speak what was called carny. Now, carny was just a way, it was a lingo, it was a shorthand. I remember Devon still speaks it. And like, for instance, it's pretty much just a variation of pig Latin. So, if you're saying duck the punch, you might say dizuck the pizunch, So that's a lingo. By the time I got there, that was pretty much phased out though. Guys would still use it sometimes, and all that was used for was so you could call spots, and then the people in the front row who might hear you talking would not recognize what you're saying though. Did a lot of guys in the locker room want to date the female talent? Or was it just everyone was pretty much just friends with everyone and that's it? Life happens, things take over. Attraction wins out in many cases, and a lot of the wrestlers would end up dating and they would end up together. And you see a lot of people, they end up getting married to specific talent. I'm thinking of Miz. Miz is married to a former WWE wrestler. So in some cases, it's a good thing, but good question. Got a couple questions regarding backstage fights. Just want to ask, how often did they happen? And do the other wrestlers instantly try to break it up, or do they let them go for a little bit before breaking them up? Backstage fights occasionally do happen. They're not as much as you think though. And for the most part, guys do try to get in and break stuff up, but at the end of the day, if two guys want to get at each other and they have stuff to get off their chest, as long as they're not handling it out in the ring. If you're hurting someone or taking liberties with someone in the ring, you're affecting their ability to put food on the table. You don't want to do that. But heads are gonna butt. People aren't gonna get along. I never saw anybody back there just absolutely whooping the hell out of anyone. For the most part, guys would scuffle around a little bit, and then just like in high school, somebody would pull them apart, and then the stories would start about how, I was being held back, or this or that, or someone sucker punched me, or whatever. Verbal altercations probably would take place a lot more than physical altercations. But at the end of the day, everybody was just trying to put a good product out there. But for the most part, something happens, let it happen, wipe it under the rug, go to the next town. Did you guys play practical jokes on each other? Oh, yes, we did. If so, what was the funniest one you've ever seen done? Did we play practical jokes on each other? Absolutely. Oh gosh, ribs were notorious. I was ribbed my very first day being at Raw. I walk in new with a duffel bag, just a regular gym duffel bag with handles. Throughout the day, I would go and get whatever I needed out of my bag, and then at some point I left the locker room and didn't come back for hours. Well, by the time I go to shower for the night and get ready to go to the next town, I could not find my bag.
And I was looking and looking, and then someone told me, and they pointed up, and they had managed to chain my duffel bag. I don't know where they got a chain from. They chained my duffel bag to the bars in the ceiling and cut the straps off of it. So for the remainder of the loop, I didn't have a strap on a duffel bag. I had to walk around with this big bag. I had to go to the airport and check it like that. And I remember someone telling me, yeah, get a rolling bag, to which I got home and immediately got a rolling bag. So yeah, practical jokes definitely take place, but it's a part of a wrestling culture that just makes wrestling so much fun.
I'm really curious about what choices you got to make for yourself, or if you got to veto anything you did not want to do. I hear it's pretty dictatorship-like. So, was that your experience? Or did you get a fair say on the Maven character? I mean, I wouldn't go as far as calling it dictator-like, but remember, the WWE is giving you a platform. They're giving you a place that millions of eyeballs are gonna see you each and every week. And they're giving you a name. Fortunately for me, I was using my real name, so it would be something that I could carry with me moving forward and try to market, try to do something like this with. Again, the top guys might get to veto stuff. I know there were, times when Austin, nah, I'm not doing that. But Stone Cold, he earned the right to veto something. Anything brought my way, I was shaking my head yes and going out there and doing it to the best of my ability. Someone might want to veto something, but it's always going to go to the office, and whatever they see fit, that's what's going to happen. And for people that didn't want, for people that wasn't okay with that, they were shown the door. And as far as did I get a fair say on the Maven character, if you know what the Maven character was, I'm all ears. Did ring rats still exist when you're on the roster, or were they gone after the 90s? Any funny stories related to that matter? Ring rats, what is that? Every industry has groupies, hanger-on, girls that miraculously show up at the show or at the hotel wanting to spend time with the boys. Majority of wrestling fans are guys. And did rats exist? Were there groupies? Yeah, there were. But I wasn't looking for companionship, if that makes sense. If it found me, it found me. But I wasn't going out of my way to look for it. What were some of your wildest creative ideas you were given or heard of others being given? The wildest creative idea that was thrown my way was obviously the whole evolution angle. And at the beginning of the thought of there being an evolution, it was always known that it was going to be, Rick, Hunter, Randy, and then, I think they were, flipping back and forth between Dave and Mark Jindrak. I heard through the grapevine that they were thinking about putting me in it. I don't know how true that was. And by heard, no one from the office ever mentioned anything to me. It was just in passing that I would hear it. So whether it was true or whether I was ever in the mix between Rick and Hunter, I don't know. But you asked if there was any wildest creative ones I heard. That's definitely one of the wildest ones I've heard. When planning a usually bigger pay-per-view match, how do wrestlers come to an agreement on who will be receiving end of big, dangerous spots? The match I had in mind when asking this question is Taker vs. Mankind, Hell in a Cell, where Foley took 2 huge bumps while Taker stayed relatively safe. Okay, Hell in a Cell, 98. Obviously, I was not in the WWE at this time, but I do remember watching this match. It's not like someone's, hey, you're doing the big spot this time, or you're doing this dangerous move that time. For the most part, guys they're vying for that. They want those eyeballs. If you remember a Royal Rumble, I forget which year it was, but remember Paul London? I still remember him going, over being eliminated, and it was just such a huge bump he took. And I mean,
That's what people remember from that Rumble. And that's what guys were going for. Guys wanted to do something, not dangerous, but they wanted to do something big, so people would still be talking about it way later. Once you were finally working WWF talent, what was the most disappointing thing you discovered about being a professional wrestler? And on the flip side, what was something that was positive surprise you didn't expect when becoming a full-time performer for the WWF? As a fan, you're watching something and excited about what you're seeing and shocked when you see different turns and characters maybe going in arcs that you don't expect. But once you're a working WWF wrestler, once you're on the road, then it's a job, and you lose everything that makes it great about being a fan. Trust me, I'm glad I did. But even to this day, I still watch wrestling completely different, and I don't watch it as I did as a fan. And on the flip side, something that was a positive surprise, I think the biggest positive surprise to me was, no matter how big one of the superstars was, just how down to earth they are, just knowing how attainable and just how just pleasant most everyone was to work with. And it didn't matter lower end of the roster to the top end of the roster. Guys were just approachable and knew how to handle the fans. If a wrestler hits you too hard in the ring, what was the protocols for telling them to stop hitting you so hard? Well, hit them back. We have a tool for that, and it's called a receipt. And I found out about receipts very quickly. One of my first matches, I was wrestling Taz. I was amped up, my adrenaline was flowing, and I went to hit Taz, and I popped him, and I was like, sorry. And he tapped me on the stomach, and he was like, no problem, you'll get it. And I think the spot was shoot, reverse, and clothesline, and he clotheslined me. And that was a receipt. And that's just the business. No one's gonna say stop hitting me. If you're saying stop hitting me, yeah, go sell insurance, do something else. Can you describe the emotional toll of being on the road? Whew, that's a loaded one. We often hear stories of the physical impact of the business, but what about the mental? It's hard, only, I was never married while I was wrestling, but I always felt for guys that were, for guys that had families and kids. And I remember Devon, going off and making time every day to call his kids. Your kids are your family's, life's moving on without you. And eventually it does play on your mind. For me personally, the hardest thing for me was, my mom battled cancer during my time early in my WWE career. I still remember a girl I was dating at the time. I came home off the road, and I was tired, and I was just exhausted. And I called my mom, and I told her, I don't think I'm gonna make it up today. And she stopped me, and she said, because my mom at the time had terminal cancer. And she was like, there's gonna come a day she's not around. You need to suck it up and go see her. And she was 100% right. And then after she passed in 2004, that's something I can't get back. And to this day, I still miss her every day, and I would give anything to go back and have that time with her. So for me, the mental hurdle was just getting over knowing that I was about to lose someone that meant the world to me, but I still had a career. That's a tough one. What kind of stuff was available for wrestlers in catering? Was it always the same? Was there enough food? Could you eat as much as you like? This is a great question. Catering was a buffet, and there was everything under the sun. For the most part, they had healthy options. They had your grilled chickens. They would have, a lot of times, they would have maybe a cut of steak. You would always have your vegetables. There would be potatoes, but they would have unhealthier options as well, like macaroni and cheese, mashed potatoes, good, more tasty food. It was always all you can eat. It was literally just a smorgasbord of everything under the sun. They would also have cookies and danishes and muffins and everything, every type of coffee that you could drink. Could you eat as much as you want? Yeah, you could stay there all day and eat if you wanted to. And a lot of guys we would get there, and
make our food, eat our meal, and then a lot of guys would, you know, maybe take a couple extra chicken breasts and put them to the side for later on. I know I did that a lot. Every town we went to, we had an amazing catering layout with, if you left there hungry, it was your fault, not theirs. The catering was the same for all the shows, Raw, SmackDown, but there was no catering at house shows. That's the one thing, eating's on you. So, did we have great catering? Yes, we did, but only one day, and that was at the live event. When the catering setup was there, was it just for the boys? No, it was for everyone. It was for the ring crew. It was for the announcers. It was for everyone that was on the road with the WWE. I didn't see the arena crew. Like, I wouldn't see a security guard from the arena eating and catering, although it might have happened. But if you were an employee of the WWE, catering was, you were going to catering and you were getting a good meal.
Why do wrestlers have no bulge? They taping it down or something? They're not taping it down, I think. I don't know how to say this the right way, so I'm just gonna say it. The most gifted wrestler, and by gifted, I mean from the man upstairs, the most gifted wrestler I can ever remember was Shelton Benjamin. I don't remember him walking around with tape or anything special. When you're in the ring, I don't care what's going on around. The last thing on earth you're worried about is arousal. It's the furthest thing from your mind. Obviously, if you're gifted and you might need help, you might perfect a little bit of a shimmy over, and you might, like some people, when you're a man and you're getting a custom-made suit, some tailors might ask, do you dress to the left or do you dress to the right? What they're asking is, do you hang your junk to the left or do you hang your junk to the right? Might be something you've never thought about, but you do it the same way every time, guaranteed. Same with your wrestling trunks. If you have to tape that thing down, you got issues that I never had, so I've never seen one person tape it down. Still, not a bad question. Next question, why do wrestlers even care about admitting to PEDs or performance-enhancing drugs? They ain't athletes. You had me until you had to throw that little extra diss in at the end of they ain't athletes. To perform in the ring takes athletic endeavor. So, I mean, just to shit on it and say they ain't athletes, but that's not your original question. Why do they even care about admitting to taking performance-enhancing drugs? I don't know. I can't answer for everyone. I can only answer for myself, and I've never understood. Am I ashamed of my PED use? I'm not. I'm just not. I'm sorry if you're looking for someone to be ashamed of it, and you're upset that I'm not. I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. It's what I had to do. It's what I thought was the best for my career at the time. The reason why I think steroid use was so prevalent in wrestling is because of the travel schedule. The moment you throw plane rides and cars and hotels and everything in the mix, and then and especially dieting, eating while on the road is impossible. And I don't want to be the asshole in Denny's trying to have the cook in the back who could care less about my dietary goals, having to tell him to go light on the oil when you're making my egg white omelet. He don't give a shit. Dieting on the road is difficult, and I think it's just easier. It's easier to take something that's gonna give you a little bit of an edge. And maybe they don't want to admit it because of the legality reasoning behind it. I mean, obviously steroids is illegal, but even when I was getting stuff mailed to my house, I wasn't worried about it. Why? Because I had a doctor's prescription for everything that was getting mailed to my front door. The last thing I was ever worried about was the legality. Could have been an issue, I guess, if I was getting them on the black market, but I just wasn't. So, why do wrestlers born in the 70s, I was born in the 70s, have to be such performative pussies about disliking certain things that happen in wrestling? I just think it's human nature to think that the era you're a part of is the end all be all best of anything. I think things just have to evolve, and I think people have to adapt or die. Obviously, it's more of a television product now. Everything's geared towards television and ad sales, everything. And 20, 30, 40 years ago, it just wasn't. It was geared more towards the performance. I look at the product now and I think, oh man, we wouldn't have done that in our time, or maybe. But I also look at it and think the opposite. I think, holy cow, these guys are so athletic these days. They're doing stuff I would have never thought about doing. I just recognize also that they have different parameters, different instructions, and different goals when they go out to perform. Why do wrestlers stop everything they're doing when someone else's music hits? You've been watching a wrestling match and action will be taking place, and then if they're gonna have a run-in or something and you hear the glass break, you see the wrestler go from hitting and look up and stop. Why? Why do they do that? Because it's a show, because they're trying to elicit a reaction from you. They're trying to get you as excited as they can be for that person being in the arena. And it's a magic trick. They're trying to take your attention away from, don't look in the right hand over here, look in my left hand over here. Well, music hitting, that's all that's happening. It's taking your attention from one area, focusing it on another area, just to continue telling a story. All in all though, great question. So what do WWE wrestlers do when it's a commercial break? They just stop wrestling? No, the action in the ring is still taking place for the house or for the audience. Now, they're not going to hit any big high spots. They're not going to do anything that's going to tell too much of a story, but they're not just going to stop wrestling. Why? Because everybody in that ring has one of these, and everybody in that ring would start recording, and then it would be on every social media platform if they did just stop wrestling. And that doesn't help anybody. If anything, they might grab a rest hold, they might work, take it down, actually talk over, figure out the rest of the match, talk over the rest of the spots that they have to hit. Refs might tell them how much of a cue. Hey, remember, you got 5 more minutes. You have this, you have that. And it's just almost a place to collect yourself or get your bearings. Great question though. What do WWE wrestlers use as face paint? It never smudges. Well, to the contrary, it indeed does smudge. And if you see it and it hasn't smudged, it's probably just because they haven't made contact with anyone's body or the mat or anything yet. I worked with Jeff Hardy one night, and it was when he was wearing green face paint. And at the end of the match, I had that shit all over me. It was on my arms. It was everywhere. I never painted my face, thank the Lord. But I would see guys backstage painting their face, and I don't think they used anything special. I don't think it was a special, type of paint that they used. I mean, for the most part, I remember watching Boogeyman, take hours to get his face that meticulously done the way he did. And I remember watching him dip his brush in it, and it looked like I was back in Mrs. Duke's 9th grade art class when I was in school. But I promise you, it indeed will smudge. Good question though. Do wrestlers have acting coaches, or do they just be winging it? I know for a fact that most guys are winging it indeed, and most guys aren't going to take the time and the added expense to get an acting coach. But then you have some guys like Batista. Batista, even back in and I'm talking 2004, 2005 time, once he was looking to just be a better performer, I know he started reaching out to acting coaches, and I know he was asking, for help from people that do it as a profession. That's not the norm though. Most guys are winging it. Keep in mind, the WWE, they're not providing or paying for acting coaches. We're not getting there and then setting us up in a room and saying, okay, you're going to be taking lessons from Anton here, who performed in Cats off Broadway. Not happening. But every now and then you have your Batistas. I'm assuming Rock has had coaching, and Austin, I'm assuming he's had coaching, but I'm assuming that coaching is for the big screen and not the square circle. How come wrestlers don't qualify for SAG benefits? They are performers or actors. Now, SAG is Screen Actors Guild, so they're asking why wrestlers don't qualify for that union. They will if they are doing something outside of wrestling, then they can be in the actors union outside of that. As for performers and being in the union while wrestling, just something that just never happened. It's something that people have talked about for years, and even Jesse Ventura tried to get a union for professional wrestlers. Just nothing ever came of it. I wish wrestlers were in a union. I wish wrestlers could qualify for SAG, mainly because then they would get health insurance that extend beyond what happens to you in the ring. Don't know how it is now, but during my day, only health insurance I had was what happened in the ring. I don't know why a wrestlers union never materialized. I tend to believe it had something to do with the McMahons. And now that what has happened with Vince, who knows? It might be something that wrestlers want to circle back around. It's definitely something that I think is needed and long overdue. How come wrestlers die so early in their career, or they don't make it past a certain age? That is a tough question, and it's obviously tough because it's something that the older I get, it's something that, I have to deal with front and center. There were years that I would wake up and take pills to get me going. I would take steroids to build my body up. I would take painkillers to ease the pain. I would drink alcohol, and then I would take sleeping pills to go to sleep. Remember, our bodies, they're not forever, and the more you damage something in hopes of a certain look or being able to perform a certain way, or with a desire to be able to actually get some sleep. Hell, I remember I used to get on a 3-hour plane ride, and I'd take 3 Ambien for a 3-hour plane ride. Why? Because that was 3 solid hours that I was going to be able to sleep, and it was worth it, and I wanted to fall asleep as soon as that plane took off. I truly think that when the wellness policy came about, I think that helped. I think that, I really do believe that's gonna make a difference. Why do people run the ropes? Why don't they just stop? Easy answer, momentum. When someone shoots you off, the ropes are a couple feet away, of course you're gonna hit them. And of course that momentum is gonna send you back in their direction. Why do wrestlers hit the ropes? Because it's a show. For the majesty of the wrestling ring, nothing takes the place of hitting the ropes. And when you get guys that can hit the ropes and crisscross each other and can, do aerial stunts with it, small feats of athleticism like that is why wrestlers hit the ropes. What is a WWE house show? You've probably heard the phrase house show or live event, and all that is a show for the house. And by house, I mean the people that paid attendance. It's not a televised show. It's not the normal Raw, SmackDown, or pay-per-view that you see on your television week to week. A house show is just what it says, a show just for the house. And most live events, most house shows, you don't have the pageantry, you don't have the big trons, you don't have all the glitz and glam. It's just a basic wrestling show. And for wrestling fans, a lot of them appreciate that way more because you're not having to break for commercials. You're not having to break for the television. You're not having to deal with just all the things that have to be dealt with during a taping or an airing. It was great for us wrestlers because the shows were more low-key, meaning we were able to go out and work on stuff. We were able to go out and maybe try something that we would never try on a television night. I always heard that the way that The Rock developed the people's elbow was indeed at house shows. He was trying to pop or make the boys in the back laugh, and he did the people's elbow. And The fans loved it. The fans reacted. And once the fans react to something, then you know you're on to something. And then you transition that to television. That's exactly what house shows are for. Great, great question. Why don't wrestlers stay retired when they say they're retiring? The allure of stardom, the constant chasing of dollars, the lust for fame. And man, it's an elusive thing. And once you have it, you realize how fleeting it is. And once you get and you're on top, you don't want to let that go. When you are known as Maven the wrestler and then that gets taken away from you, it's tough. It's a hard pill to swallow. But then you realize you're always gonna be in people's eyes what you were. You might not be at the level that they once saw you at or revered you at, and obviously there's always going to be someone to come and replace you, but it's just tough. And we all want to see the best version of ourselves, and we all want to extend that version as long as we can. Wrestlers are no different. Next question: how much money do WWE wrestlers spend on gear? Personally, I would wear the easiest gear known to man. I would wear just the trunks. And those trunks would run me, I would say about $125 to $150 just for those simple trunks. Now, that was for that. A pair of wrestling boots can run you several $100s, and I mean, they have to be sized for you. They have to make sure they fit your feet, and they're pretty pricey. And once you get a good pair of wrestling boots, every, I would say 8 months, I would have to get my boots resoled, meaning I had to have a person in my town, a cobbler, a shoe repair guy who I trusted that when I came off the road, I could give my boots to, and I knew he was going to have them 1, maybe 2 days at the most, and have them back in my hands. So I wasn't going to have to go to my old boots on my next loop. So once you buy your gear, you're still gonna constantly be upgrading your gear. You're constantly going to be taking care and maintaining your boots. Some guys would have extremely elaborate and expensive gear. I know Flair's robes, some of those robes were in the thousands, and some guys would constantly be painting their face or wearing masks, and those masks aren't cheap. And over time, you're trying to evolve. So the more you evolve, that's just the more money coming out of your pocket. I would spend about $1,000 a year on my gear, but I got off easy. I know some guys were spending 5, 6, 10 times that amount. How come WWE wrestlers always go through the Spanish announce table? It's a running joke. Everybody knows that during a pay-per-view or one of the big shows, action's always gonna spill to the outside. There's always gonna be a big bump. And the Spanish announce table is always going to be the first thing that is taken out. I remember watching guys get prepared for pay-per-view days, and we'd get together and we'd be in the ring and going over spots, and then you knew it was a pay-per-view once they had the 2 announce tables up. And I would see guys working on their stuff, and it was even a joke then. Guys would, hey, we got to go through a table. It's going to be the Spanish announce table first. So I think it's one of the things that started off as a joke and just became tradition. And it still is to this day. How many hours do WWE wrestlers have for PTO, paid time off? Well, easy answer for that is this many. We're not a 40-hour-a-week job. We're not punching a clock. We're not making sure if we stay a little bit late for work, we're getting paid overtime for it. You're not asking for any paid time off. You're a performer. And the more that you're performing, the more money you're making. We're in a business where you, the fans, decide who the stars are. And you don't become a star with paid time off. You don't become a star by not being in front of the fans. Now, if you are on the road and you get injured, that's what we would have our downside guarantee for. We would be at home healing an injury, still collecting a check. But remember, while you're at home, these people, out of sight, out of mind, if they're not seeing you, your whole life revolves around that day you return. And also during my time, we just made more money when we were in the ring, when we were on the road. Our downside guarantees just didn't pay as much as our pay sheets did. So pay time off, none of us wanted it. Do WWE wrestlers get imposter syndrome? Do some guys feel like they don't belong? And I have to be honest with you, I probably had imposter syndrome my entire time I was in the WWE. There was never a day that I walked into that locker room and didn't have that little bit in the back of my mind thinking, man, I don't know if I belong in here. I've talked to other guys who I'd be in the car with, and we were big silly kids, and we just didn't feel like we were at the top of our profession, but we were. I think everybody, when you get to a specific level, has a little bit of imposter syndrome. That's just self-doubt creeping in. WWE wrestlers are certainly no different. Do WWE wrestlers get bodyguards? Wrestlers don't have bodyguards with them full-time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We really don't need it. But the bigger of a star you become, the more you do need to just be careful when you leave an arena. Maybe duck out the side, or maybe do a little bit of misdirection. Randy Orton's leaving over here when in fact we parked over on this side away from everyone and we're already 10 minutes down the road. Because sometimes you never know. There might be that one fan that for whatever reason just wants to test you that night. I've seen it happen, and it's one of the ugly parts of just fame in general. The bigger issue for wrestlers are just having handlers, or if we're doing an event, if we're doing a signing or something, just having someone that can keep the line moving, can keep fans from just loitering, for a lack of a better term. WWE makes sure they keep people from doing that, and they make sure that they usher you into places and out of places. But having a 24-hour protection, just not gonna happen. How come pro wrestlers get their freak on inside the ring and go calm and cool, collected outside the ring? That's the job. The job is being bigger than life. I remember Al Snow during training would say, do everything big so the person up in the last row can see you. If you're going to throw a punch, don't throw it like this, throw it like this to make sure they see. Everything in wrestling has to be bigger. You don't want to see that when the guy's outside the ring, when they're walking into Outback Steakhouse. They're of course not gonna act like that. They're gonna act like a regular person. You realize if you see Wicked, there's not really a green witch walking around. Same with wrestling. It's performative art, and when they leave the ring, they go back to being just regular people. Are wrestlers allowed to improvise in terms of when to end a match on live TV? And the simple answer is not only no, but heck no. If we improvise in the phrase of ending a match or when to end a match on live TV, we're sending everyone scrambling. We're sending the people in the truck scrambling. We're sending the people backstage scrambling. We're sending the people that are coming up after us who might not be 100% ready scrambling. Remember, there might be a live pre-tape after your match, and if they're not ready to go live and you just decide you want to end the match, what are they going to go to? You're just asking for a world of trouble if you go off the cuff and end a match early. I'm not saying it's never happened, and I'm not saying we're not allowed to go off the cuff. Of course, accidents do happen. Occasionally, injuries will happen, or occasionally something will go awry. But you do everything in your power to go by the book. The last thing you want is to make anyone else's job harder, because the more you make someone else's job difficult, the easier it might be to tell you to hit the road. Are wrestlers allowed to pick what they wear to the ring, or does someone pick it for them? For the most part, they're gonna give you creative freedom. They're gonna let you put your outfits or put your gimmick together the way you see fit, the way you see yourselves. But occasionally they're going to have ideas for you. Occasionally they're going to want you to go in a specific direction. I know when they came up with the Simon Dean gimmick, Simon had as much emphasis on coming up with that gimmick, but it was a collaborative effort. They were, hey, add this to it as well. I wore black for years, and then when I turned heel or became a bad guy, I then started wearing colors. I never had to get approval for whatever color I was gonna wear each and every night, even on pay-per-views. But if they have a specific gimmick, if they have a specific look, a specific character, you're gonna listen to whatever they suggest. Are wrestlers allowed to get brand deals? During my time, we were not. I think now, maybe things are different, but that also could have been because during my time, we just didn't have managers, we didn't have agents, we had ourselves and we had the company and we were listening to what the company said. Now, granted, we were 1099s or independent contractors, but still, we weren't allowed to have management representing us that were working in our best interest, trying to get us such brand deals. I know I would have loved to have been able to have some brand deals back during my time. Watching wrestling and wondered, what do wrestlers do if they have to pee? I would always make sure that before I would go up the steps to gorilla position or the place where wrestlers stand before their music hits and they go out, the last stop I always made was the bathroom. I was always stopping to take care of that problem. Didn't matter. The moment I saw the curtain, the only thing separating me from thousands of people and live TV cameras, nerves took over. It just was going to happen. I was going to get nervous. The good thing about it is the moment I went through that curtain, everything went away. I never actually felt like I still had to pee once I got out to the ring. And for the most part, guys, I think feel pretty much the same way. I think most guys have a big bottle of nerves, and a bottle of nerves that goes away the moment you're actually performing. You just get into the momentum of the match and you forget about all those trivial things. And the moment you get backstage, then you start living your life again. But still, good question. Do wrestlers get free Starbucks? Well, not Starbucks, but there are special perks we get for being a WWE wrestler. And to find out what those are, click the link on screen.